Today I'm going to be doing a guide on an add-on called WeakAuras 2. It used to be called WeakAuras, but they changed it to WeakAuras 2, not sure why. So once you download it, you type /WA, and that brings up all your WeakAuras and the options. I'm just going to go over all the auras that I have on this character, and you can decide whether or not you want to make them or make something similar. Also, I couldn't really find a way to make this video less than like 15 minutes, so if you want to skip an aura or skip a section, I'm going to have an annotation throughout the video and you can just click it and you'll skip ahead to the next part of the video. It'll probably be like 15 or so of those, so it'll be easy to navigate. The first 4 show that if my target is immune to some sort of damage, white means they're immune to all damage, red means they can reflect my damage, this one means they have Touch of Karma on me specifically, and this one means they're immune to magical damage. The next 6 are all part of the same one also. It shows if they have damage reduction spells on them. The first one is green, it shows if they have 20% damage reduction, yellow means 30%, red means 40%, and purple means 50%. This one's my health bar, and so is this one. They're both part of the same thing. This one shows my pet's health if I have a pet. These two show if I have my trinket proc or my jade spirit proc. This one shows my current burning embers. This one is an overlay on my health bar, it shows if I have burning rush up. This one shows if I don't have curse of the elements on my current target and only if I'm in combat. These two show if I don't have dark intent up. This one's for the spell power and this one's for the stamina. This one is for glyph of ember tap, it shows the duration of the buff that you get if you have the glyph on. This one is if the person has glyph of grounding totem, if you can reflect grounding. And this one shows that I can't fear the target. So I'm just going to go over the very basics of this add-on so that you can use this information to make all the other ones and I won't have to explain it every single time. So to make a new aura, you just click new up here at the top and then you just decide which type of aura you want to use. The only ones I'll be using are progress bar, text, texture, and progress texture. So in order to make a new aura, all you do is click on the type that you want, and I'm just going to go over each of the tabs that I use so I don't have to explain them every single time. So for the display tab, it's basically what it looks like, what color it is, how big it is, where it is on your screen, and how far up it is on your interface, and by that I mean frame strata. Background means it's below everything else on your interface, it's the lowest layer of your interface. And tooltip means it's the highest layer of your interface, it's on top of everything else on your screen. And inherited is kind of like tooltip, except it shows up on top of everything that's currently on your screen. If you have 2 inherited auras, and one shows up and then another one does, the new one will be on top of the old one. The trigger tab is basically what makes it show up on your screen. So your health would be in here, or buffs and debuffs on the enemy targets, or burning embers, that's what you would set in the trigger tab. The load tab is similar to the trigger tab, but it's more about what character you're on, what spec you're in, where you are in the game, and what level you are, and things like that. So the first 4 are progress textures. And in the display tab, you want to choose a shape and a square. And then you can size it up however you want, but I'm just going to leave it like that. And you want this on, I would say, somewhere in between background and tooltip, up to you. Just not inherited, that gets annoying. It starts bottom to top, even though it's top to bottom. You want to get rid of the background offset, I recommend. Okay, so for the trigger tab, the default is aura, and aura means buffs and debuffs, and that's what you want. So I'm just going to do Divine Shield, but you can type in whatever you want. All the immunities in the game, Divine Shield, Ice Block, Alter Time, Dark Bargain, and anything else. So for the trigger tab, you want those auras, and unit, you want to be target, because these are buffs on your current target. And they are buffs, they're not debuffs. These, don't mess with them, and that's basically it. So to make the other 3 as quickly as you can just duplicate this, go to the display tab, change the foreground color to red, and then start typing in the triggers: deterrence, spell reflection, etc., etc. So Same thing with the black one, just do the exact same thing. The only one that's different is Touch of Karma. I'll show you how to make it. You duplicate it, just make it skinnier, change the display to whatever color you want. I'm gonna go with darker red, and change the trigger to same thing, Touch of Karma. And this is gonna be on yourself, the player, and it's a debuff. So on to these 6. They're really not that complicated and they're probably not really complete, but I do find it really helpful to find if the player is taking less damage. So for the shape, you probably shouldn't choose this one. I just chose it because I've always used it, and I would hope that you don't copy my auras directly. You might want to use a circle, but I'm using power aura icons and it's this shape right here, a nonagon. So for all of these, you just have to make one and duplicate it. But for this one, the display is pretty simple. My frame strat is low because it's the least damage reduction. The next one up is medium, the next one is high, the next one is also high. All these are high because they're the same. And this one should actually be dialogue. Anyways, for this one, the trigger is Barkskin or Iron Bark. It's the only trigger for that one. For the next one, it's Shamanistic Rage, and that's the only one that is a 30% damage reduction that I know of. For the next two, for the 40% one, it's Pain Suppression, Unending Resolve, and Shield Wall. Those all are 40% damage reduction. And for the next two, these are combinations. Some people have Barkskin, Iron Bark macros, so what you have to do is click this Add Trigger button, and it makes another trigger, so I already have it. Trigger 1 is Barkskin, trigger 2 is Iron Bark. And I have selected all triggers. This means that it will only show up if they have Barkskin and Iron Bark up. And for the next one, it's Divine Protection, and that's only magical damage. So you might want to go to the Load tab and make it load on only people who do magical damage. So I have it loaded for Death Knights, Hunters, Mages, Shamans, and Warlocks. And the last one is just Survival Instincts. I really recommend tracking Survival Instincts. It's not very noticeable, and it's a huge damage reduction. I actually have a guide for my health bar, but I'll tell you how to do it anyways. So this one is a progress texture, and the display is a shape and square. And I took away the background offset, made it green in the foreground for health, red in the background for not health, and completely opaque. And then you go right to left, make it whatever size you want, and then the trigger for this one is health. So it's a status, and it's defaulted by health. So that's a health bar right there. Health bar of my player, and in order to make it small out of combat, you just duplicate it. And for the big one, you load in combat. And for the other one, you make it smaller, load not in combat. So for this one, my pet's health, it's pretty much the same as your own health. You do the same thing for display, except mine goes top to bottom. You don't have to do that. The trigger, the only difference is the unit is your pet, and you have to check the health is greater than equal to 1. Otherwise, it'll show up even when your pet's sacrificed. And that's it for your pet health. For these two, Jade Spirit and Surge of Dominance, you go to New. It's actually a progress bar because it has the icon on it, and it has the duration and the name if you want, but I choose to take it off. So the display, the right text, %P, that's the time left. I'm just going to make it a space so I don't see it. Left text, same thing. And for the orientation, you make it top to bottom, move it wherever you want. And I like to use Armory bar, it's flat. And for the icon itself, if you leave it as auto, sometimes it's able to detect what it looks like. So if you type Jade Spirit as the trigger, it detects it right there. Sometimes it doesn't, and you have to uncheck auto and then choose and then search Jade Spirit. And sometimes you have to use different keywords. It's sometimes hard to find, but usually it'll do it automatically. So just leave it auto. And the bar color, I made it greenish, blue and half opaque. Probably less than half. And if you want the whole thing to be opaque, you can just use this. But I like the icon to be visible. And that's it. By default, it's an aura buff on player, so just type in Jade Spirit and then duplicate it, move it over. You can see them both at the same time to line them up, or you can use the sliding bars and type in actual values. And for the second one, it's going to be Surge of Dominance. And change it to red. And then there you go. I'll do an example of these. See, I got Jade Spirit and Surge of Dominance. And this is a really popular one that everyone wants to know how to make, Burning Embers. I'm going to make it from scratch. It's a text, and the display text is going to be %P. It's a progress, how much Burning Embers you have. So %P for that, that's all you type, and then hit accept. And then the size, I use maximum size, and you can choose the font and everything yourself. I made it orange. The trigger is a status, and it's right here, Burning Embers, on the player. And that's essentially all you have to do. It's exactly the same as the other one. Simple as that. This one, Burning Rush, it's really simple. It's just an overlay on my health bar to see if I have Burning Rush up. It's a texture, a square, you just make it big, you already know how to do this. And an aura, Burning Rush. Just make it a little bit bigger than your health bar, and make sure on your display that it's above your health bar in the frame strata. So my health bar is currently on background, the lowest one, and my Burning Rush is right above it on low. So as long as it's above the health bar, you will be able to see it. And the trigger is Burning Rush, player, buff, nothing else. And I only load this on a Warlock, but that's only for organization, so it doesn't show up because I have a lot of different characters and a lot of different auras, as you can see. So for this one, Curse of the Elements, it shows if I don't have Curse of the Elements up on the player and I'm in combat. Also works for Curse of Enfeeblement. So how you do this is icon. The trigger is going to be Curse of the Elements. Unit target to debuff. And you want to inverse it so it only shows up if it's not active. And for some reason when you click inverse, it doesn't find the icon anymore. So you have to choose your own icon. So Curse of the yeah. Okay. So that's not the only trigger. You have to hit add trigger, and this is going to be an aura. This is going to be Curse of Enfeeblement. And for this one, same thing, target, debuff, inverse, but you're going to select own only, because you don't want this disappearing if someone else uses Curse of Enfeeblement, only if someone else uses Curse of the Elements, because you want them to be taking that extra magic damage. And lastly, the load tab, you just want to make sure it only loads in combat, because that giant Curse of the Elements on your screen is kind of annoying if it's there all the time. Also, you want to only load it if you're a Warlock and only greater than equal to level 51. Otherwise, you're going to get that Curse of the Elements on all your characters, and if you're leveling a Warlock, it's going to be on there when you don't actually have Curse of the Elements. The next one is my Dark Intent reminder. It shows up if I don't have Dark Intent on myself all the time, even if I'm not in combat, because it's really important. And I make sure it's above the Curse one, so it's on low and the Curse is on background. There's two different ones, one for spell power, one for stamina. And the reason is, if I already have spell power and stamina in some combination, I don't have to put it up. So, for the spell power one, display, refer back to the curse. Trigger is going to be Dark Intent, player, buff, inverse, and there's 3 triggers. Second one, Arcane Brilliance, gives you spell power. Third one, Dalaran Brilliance, gives you spell power. And for the stamina one, same kind of thing. You do Dark Intent as the first trigger, and Power Word Fortitude for the second one, and Commanding Shout for the last one. So if you have a combination of one of those two, you don't have to put Dark Intent up. And you do want to select all triggers for both of these, because if it's any trigger, then This will be up all the time if you don't have Commanding Shout or Power Word Fortitude. This one is only if you have Glyphed Ember Tap. It'll show you the duration of the buff, so you don't have to, overlap Ember Taps. It's really useful, I think. So it's a text, and the display is %p the progress, and I just put it on top of my bars, so it's on tooltip, the frame strata. The trigger is Ember Tap, that's the name of the buff, player, buff, and I load this if I'm a Warlock, just for organization. And finally, the last two. This one's the same as the first one, exactly the same, just a big square, and the trigger is Grounding Totem, so you don't reflect. It's specifically pink just because I know it's reflective, because it doesn't show up as a buff if they don't have the glyph. And this one is Lichborn and Berserker Rage. Buffs on the targets, simple as that, really easy to make, you should know how to make it if you watch the whole video. So that's it for that video, which was a pain in the ass to make. And if you have any questions, and I'm sure I missed something, I'll be sure to answer them. And if you ask a question that I already answered, I'll be sure to make you feel stupid about it. And see you next time.